Yo, what's good, YouTube, man? It's Gabriel with another Fan TV. Back at you with another video. Like the content of this video, go smash that like button. Like the content of this channel, go ahead and subscribe, man. Look, Ravens Cowboys played last night. The Ravens end up getting the W 31-13. So it's preseason, so I'm not really going to talk about how I feel about the Ravens winning the game, stuff like that. That doesn't really matter to me. We're going to more talk about some things that I thought was interesting. This players I was disappointed in, maybe their performance, and standout performance from last night's game that maybe gives us a little glimpse into what could potentially happen. When the regular season and the games start to count, right? So, all right. Now as far as just some things that I noticed as far as the offense goes last night, I would say that the Ravens spent a lot of time under center, right? And that's something that I've always wanted the Ravens to do for the last couple of years, right? Spend some more time under center. That I think that would enhance the passing game even more. Now, when the Ravens get to the regular season, Lamar Jackson likes to operate out the shotgun, so I don't think it'll be as heavy as it was, say, yesterday. But I do hope that means that they will be incorporating more under center. I think that opens up the running game for a guy like Derrick Henry, who that's where he primarily came from, especially from Tennessee. A lot of under center run game. That opens up the play action, Lamar Jackson on the bootleg, even just regular play action, wide zone play action, all kind of things kind of open up when you can have a more diversified running game from under center, right? So I don't think the Ravens are going to be in it, how like the Rams are or something like that, you know what I mean? But I do like the fact that we saw a lot of it last night, and that could be a little bit of an indication maybe into the future, right? That they'll do it some more. Not a lot, but some more. All right. Sorry, I skipped over the injury, right? So the injury, it was an injury last night. Adisa Isaac. First they said it was a cramp. They say he might have been a concussion, but it's come out that he has a dislocated elbow. So that's going to land him on IR. He's going to miss a few weeks, right? So unfortunate for Adisa Isaac, a second-year player. He was having a decent training camp and whatnot. He flashed some in the first preseason game as well. So it's unfortunate for him to go down with that injury, right? So hopefully speedy recovery for him. And they said the IR. I don't know if that's for the season or just for the first couple of weeks. I think it's just going to be for like that first 4-6 weeks, but we'll see what happens from there. All right. Now, so that was my thought about the Ravens offense, right? Just a lot of understanding, right? Now something I know about the Ravens, I guess you could say that the defense was that attacking style was back, right? The Ravens were all over the Cowboys from jump, right? Different blitzes from different angles. It felt like the Ravens really swarmed to the football, right? Now that's not something that says that that's something I think it was a little bit missing, like especially that first 10 weeks of the season last year. We saw it more towards the back end of last year, but these first couple of preseason games, we're seeing that defense, even with the backups in, are flying around, right? You're getting safety blitzes, you're getting guys coming free linebacker blitzes, different kind of stunts and twists. Malik Ham got an unblocked sack, right? Due to how the pressure was designed up, right? So I like seeing that. All right. Now we'll do the disappointing performers, and then we'll do some stand-up performers, right? So disappointed, just the backup QB battle, right? Now your backup quarterback in the NFL is never going to be a guy that should surpass your starter, obviously, right? And the Ravens have Lamar Jackson, so there is no surpassing that, right? But at the end of the day, the Ravens went out and spent this money on Cooper Rush. They drafted Devin Leary last year, and I just don't like what I've seen from the guys, if I'm being completely honest, all right? Cooper Rush, now, the stats aren't bad, right? 20 for 30, 198, one touchdown, two interceptions. One interception is not his fault. He throws a pass under pressure to Rasheen Ali, bounces off Rasheen Ali's hands. That's not his fault. Rasheen Ali got to catch that pass. Okay, but it's the fact that Cooper Rush still makes mistakes like he's a rookie, right? The arm is underwhelming. Doesn't have a lot of zip. Doesn't get there very quickly. So I get why he's a backup quarterback, right? I'm sure he's a smart guy, great guy in the locker room, good veteran. But when it comes to his play on the field, I just haven't seen it right now. This is his first time in a new offense, right? Well, I'm not sure if he left Dallas, but this is the first time on the Ravens, so we'll just leave it at that, right? So first time in the Ravens offense, so adjustments are happening and things like that, but I just haven't been overly impressed, if I'm being quite honest, right? The interception he throws, that's a pick six. We could call it pass interference, right? It's pass interference. LaJohntay Wester, I think it's on Andrew Booth, right? It's pass interference on the defense, right? But at the end of the day, Wester is not open. He's getting jammed to hell. DB's hands all over him. He's nowhere near open. Why are we throwing that football, right? Why are we passing that? So, just disappointed in that. And Devin Leary, I don't really see much progress from him since he was a rookie, right? And that's difficult because, when you're the third string quarterback, you're not the reps you're getting is limited. The guys you're playing with are probably not going to be on the team. So I get all of that, but I just haven't been very impressed with what I've seen from Devin Leary, right? I'm just going to be honest with you. And then one other guy, I talked about him, but LaJohntay West, a wide receiver, right? So as a wide receiver, last night he struggled. He really did, right? He had the drop on the sideline, the interception. When I put that on Cooper Rush because he shouldn't have thrown the ball, but he really struggled to get off press. He couldn't get the receivers' hands off of him. There was pass breakups on him. All kinds of things were happening to LaJohntay West last night, wide receiver. Now, I will say this. I think this is the Ravens at fault a little bit. They split him out wide too much, right? He is 5'8", $165. He needs to be a slot-only player, right? In college, maybe he got away with playing outside. In the NFL, I don't think that's going to happen, right? So I was a little disappointed with his performance, but at the end of the day, I do think he was miscast. I think he was outside as an outside receiver too many times, honestly, right? He needs to be a slot-only player. That's where we're going to see what LaJohntay Wester has and what he can really do if you use him in the slot. All right. That's it for that, right? So now, standout performers, man. Standout performers. All right. Starting with the offense. Tez Walker, 6 for 61. He had like 6 catches in the first 2 drives. Okay. Tez Walker was the number 1 target, and he looked good out there, right? Out routes, cross around across the field, catching with your hands, right? He did everything you want to see last night. So I was really, really impressed with Tez Walker. Now, obviously, preseason game, I'm not going to try to make overarching assumptions and whatnot, but, if one of the guys was to go down, right, the progression that Tez Walker has made during training camp, during the preseason, I feel good about, okay, the Ravens have another guy that's ready to step up and come in the game. If, say, Zay, Bate, Hop, one of those 3 go down, Tez Walker, I feel confident to say, okay, it's not a major drop off, right? Like he's a good player. Like he looks good, right? So hopefully that continues to the regular season. Second player, Dayton Wade, man. Dayton Wade, 4 for 45 out there. I was really impressed with Dayton Wade. Every time he catches the ball, he turns up the field. He's getting yak opportunities. He's just a good player. Like he's a good wide receiver, right? It's unfortunate that the Ravens, and I say this pretty much every time I talk about Dayton Wade. It's unfortunate that the Ravens have this plethora now of wide receivers where I just don't see him making the active roster. Even with LaJohntay, I said being a little disappointed in wide receiver. He's locked down that returner job because he's been a great returner so far in this preseason game. For Dayton Wade making it as strictly as a wide receiver, that's tough. But as a good player, he's a really good player. I like Dayton Wade a lot. I really do. So, shout out to Dayton Wade, right? I was impressed with his performance yesterday. Now, on defensive side of the ball, right? We're going to talk about Keon Martin, okay, number 38 out there. He had the safety, right? Came through safety corner blitz, right? Smacked Joe Milton. Joe Milton is a big. Now Joe Milton wasn't looking, but Joe Milton is a big guy, right? He's like at least 6'4", probably 230. Smacked him, got him on the ground easy, right? Great safety, and not even just that, right? I like his skills in coverage. Also his tackling, right? He had a couple of plays tackling on the outside, 1-on-1, got the guy to the ground, right? For the Ravens, really for any NFL defense nowadays, right? Your cornerback is going to have to be able to tackle, right? The way that the running game is kind of, returning and people want to run the ball more, they're going to try to force your guys who are your quote-unquote weakest people to tackle, right? And Keon Martin showed that he can tackle, right? So that's major props to him. Next guy, Ruben Lowry, star of the star training camp, star of the offseason, right? Catches the interception. Ravens, I don't want to say the Ravens really disguised coverage. They were one high all the way. He's reading the quarterback's eyes. He drifts back to the deep left side of the field, which I think he drifts back to the deep left side of the field, right? Joe Milton either doesn't see him or doesn't care, throws it up there. Ruben Lowry showing great hands, close up, makes the play, easy interception, right? This guy's a playmaker, right? The ball's in the air, he thinks that it's his, right? So, the tackling, I haven't seen too much, but, for what the Ravens are saying, he's been pretty good, but seeing him in live action, he moves around pretty well. 5'9" is it's a little shorter, right? For safety and whatnot. But the Ravens made it work with Darius Washington, who's 5'8", maybe 5'9" as well. So they're not. It's not unusual to them for have that kind of safety that size, right? But the very thing for Ruben Lowry is the Ravens trusted him to play safety in that game. He played a lot of snaps. They like him at every single spot in the defensive backfield, right? that's a major boost for his opportunity and chance to make this team, right? So, shout out to him, right? I thought he was very, very impressive, right? So shout out to Ruben Lowry, right? He's been a star training camp, started all season, and now he's made a play in the preseason game, right? It's only going to help his chances of making this roster. All right. Ravens pressure, right? I think another thing, Ravens pressure. I don't want to just tie this down to one person, right? But Mike Green, K'Mon Rucker, CJ Ravenel, the list goes on, right? Brent Urban, right? Brent Urban was getting after it out there. Okay. The Ravens were able to really push back this Cowboys defensive line, right? I talked about Malik Ham having an unblocked pressure. Malik Ham got in the backfield, had a TFL. So this Ravens defensive line was really getting after it. And through 2 preseason games, that's been a common theme. This defensive line is getting after it. So I love that, right? For the Ravens, the next step in their evolution has always been, can they get home and rushing for? Do they always have to send simulated pressure? Do they always have to send, the safety, the corner blitz, whatever? Now that worked this game. Obviously, I talked about Keon Martin getting the safety and whatnot, but at the end of the day, the Ravens were able to really kind of dominate up front, right? The Cowboys didn't have much room to operate. They were kind of stifled the whole night. I think in the first quarter, the Cowboys only had, 6 plays. The Ravens offense was able to keep the ball, but that's also because the Ravens defense was getting them off the field. You gotta give credit to both sides when that happens, right? So I was really impressed, man. I'm really impressed with this Ravens pass rush so far in these preseason games. So if the backups are doing this, hopefully the starters do this, right? And then you have these guys that's behind them that you have some faith in, right? Mike Green being one of them. I don't know if K'Mon Rucker's gonna make the 53, probably not, but I like what I saw from him. He's a strong, powerful rusher, right? And, Ravens are finding guys right now that are making some plays for them, right? So that's an encouraging sign. All right. And then, I'll do an honorable mention, but one more person for standout performer, Tyler Luke, right? Tyler Luke, 5 for 6 last night, missed 1 field goal, I believe, from 50 yards. But besides that, I think he had some 20-yard, 30-yard, 40-yard, and he made a couple from 50. So now he is missing 1 field goal a game, right? But at the end of the day, 5 for 6, you can't really complain about that, right? That's good numbers. I feel pretty good with him about being the kicker going into the season. He will have his ups and downs, right? He's a rookie, but he hasn't done anything to say like, oh man, the Ravens made a mistake, right? I think he's been good. So, keep that up. All right. So, and then 2 things for honorable mention, and then, I'll wrap it up. So for honorable mention, right, the Ravens run game, okay, that goes down to Rasheen Ali, Dearness Johnson, Myles Gaskin. So Dearness Johnson had 61 yards, 1 touchdown, 5.5 yards a carry. So Rasheen Ali, 62 yards, 3.3 yards a carry. Myles Gaskin had 20 yards, only 2.9 yards a carry, but 24 yards on the receiving game. He did call a little swing pass, turned it up, showed that burst that they were talking about. The Ravens run game to me was impressive, right? Rasheen Ali, he got vertical. He wasn't dancing, right? 3.3 is not, anything to write home about, but it's the way he ran the football, right? He wasn't dancing in the backfield. He got vertical, was physical. Dearness Johnson just showed that power, right? He's been showing that since he was in Cleveland, right? When people try to tackle him, he usually the first guy doesn't get him down, right? So I like Dearness Johnson. It also goes for the Ravens offensive line, right? Moving people in the run game. Okay, so I thought that was impressive as well. So shout out to them. And then lastly, for the honorable mention, Jay Higgins, linebacker, undrafted. All right, 6 tackles, 1 TFL, and a forced fumble. All right, forced fumble recovered by K'Mon Rucker. Okay, so for Jay Higgins, that's 2 preseason games, 2 plays made, 2 big time plays made. Right, I think he caught an interception versus the Colts, and now we're talking about TFL in the backfield and getting the strip. Okay, on Will Greer, the backup quarterback. Okay, forcing the fumble. Ravens recovered. So Teddy Buchanan had a good game as well. I'm not saying that he's above Teddy Buchanan or anything like that, but the Ravens seem like they may have found another dominant and rough linebacker. Okay, I really like what I've seen from him so far. His name doesn't really get mentioned as far as the practice reports, but when he's playing in the game, he's making plays, right? So that doesn't mean he's not playing well in practice, right? That just means reporters maybe aren't mentioning him, whatever, for whatever reason. But in the games, he's popping, right? So good for him. All right. So yeah, that's gonna wrap it up for my thoughts, my disappointing, my standout performers for the game, right? I thought the Ravens for overall it was a good showing. It's nice to win a football game, right? 31-13. It's not going to mean much as far as the regular season goes, right? We know that. But the Ravens backups, they dominated, right? Pretty much from start to finish, right? the pick six was unfortunate and whatnot in the beginning of the game, but besides that, what the Ravens scored, 26-13, 26-6, right? So, a good game overall, right? So, not too much for me to complain about. Give me your thoughts in the comments, right? I'm a part of all comments, but it's Gabriel, to the Fan TV. I'm out.